I used to think office politics was something you could outwork. If you stayed late, if you delivered numbers, if you kept your head down and made your boss look good, you'd be safe. That's what I told myself for 8 straight years at Hartwell Systems. Not because I was naive, because it worked until the day it didn't. The morning it happened was quiet in a way that felt staged. I got to the building early, like I always did when we were close to closing a deal. The lobby still smelled like overnight floor polish. The security guard barely glanced up when I badged in. The elevators were empty, no chatter, no morning rush. Just that soft hum you only notice when a place is too still. I remember thinking, good. I can get 2 hours of work done before people start interrupting me. On the ride up, my phone buzzed. One email. Conference room B, 9 a.m. Mandatory. No subject line. No sender name. Just an automated meeting notice from my VP's assistant. That alone wasn't strange. What was strange was the guest list. My name. The VP's name. HR, legal. And Tyler Hart. Tyler was the VP's son. 26, maybe 27. A polished haircut, 2 white teeth. The kind of guy who wore a blazer over a hoodie and called it startup culture. He'd been floating around our department for a few months as a special projects hire. No clear role, no clear deliverables, just an executive last name attached to a new badge. I had tried to be professional with him. I'd answered his questions. I'd forwarded him docs he asked for. I'd even invited him to sit in on a couple client calls, because I believed the story we were told. Tyler's learning the business. But seeing his name next to HR and legal at 9 a.m., that hit different. I stepped off the elevator and walked down the hallway toward my office. And that's when I noticed the first thing. My nameplate, Ethan Parker, Director, Strategic Accounts, was gone. Not slightly crooked, not covered by a sticky note. Gone. In its place, stuck cleanly to the glass like it had always been there, was a brand new nameplate. Tyler Hart. For a second, I actually looked behind me, like maybe I'd taken a wrong turn. Same carpet, same framed core values poster, same coffee station down the hall, same office, just not mine anymore. I stood there staring at the glass door, and I felt something tighten in my chest. Not panic yet, not anger, more like the brain doing that slow, disbelieving inventory. This is a mistake. Someone moved things around for renovations. Maybe they're repainting. Maybe Tyler's borrowing it for a week. Then I turned the handle. The door was unlocked. Inside, my desk had been cleared. Not messy cleared, not stacked neatly. Cleared like a hotel room after checkout. My framed photo of my wife and me, gone. The 2 binders I kept for client negotiations, gone. The sticky notes with the timelines for the quarter, gone. The little dumb stress ball shaped like a planet, gone. Even my pen cup. In its place sat a laptop I'd never seen before and a leather notebook, sitting perfectly centered like it belonged in a catalog. And on the monitor, already awake, was a file open. I recognized it immediately. A contract redline document with a header that made my stomach drop. Keller and Vaughan, Master Services Agreement. Final review. That wasn't just any client. Keller and Vaughan was the whale, a global logistics firm with operations in 14 countries. We'd been chasing them for 2 years. The deal wasn't nice for the quarter. It was company changing. If we landed it, it would be the largest contract in our division's history. 280,000 over 5 years. I had lived with that deal. I'd flown to their HQ twice. I'd taken calls at 11 p.m. from their procurement lead. I'd sat through 5 rounds of security audits. I'd built a custom pricing model that made our CFO say, "I didn't know you could do that." I knew every person on their side by name. They didn't trust our company yet. They trusted me. I stared at the document on the screen, and my eyes caught one line highlighted in yellow. Primary Account Executive, Tyler Hart. My mouth actually went dry, because that wasn't a small edit. That wasn't a typo. That was the single most dangerous change you could make in the final week of a negotiation. It wasn't just about ego. It was about authority. Keller and Vaughn had a clause in their internal process. The person named as the primary contact had to be present for final approval calls. Their legal team insisted on it. It was their way of ensuring the person who sold the solution could answer for it. Tyler didn't even know what half the terms meant. I looked around the office again, sharper now. On the shelf, where my books used to be, there were 2 trophies I'd never seen. A Young Professionals Award, and a framed quote in gold letters, "Legacy begins now." It felt like walking into someone else's life. I heard footsteps in the hallway and instinctively stepped back from the desk like I'd been caught stealing. But it wasn't security. It was Marcy from facilities, holding a small cardboard box. She stopped when she saw me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh," she said quietly, like she hadn't expected me to still be there. "Ethan." I stared at the box. "What's that?" She hesitated. Then she held it out. "This is, your personal items. They asked me to clear the office last night." "Who asked you?" She swallowed. "Mr. Hart's office." "Not Tyler." "The VP." I took the box. It wasn't heavy, which was insulting in a weird way. Like my entire presence in that room had weighed nothing. Inside were my things, stuffed with zero care. My photo frame face down, a couple pens, my stress ball, and a folded piece of paper that looked like it had been ripped out of a notebook. I unfolded it. 2 lines, handwritten in bold, confident strokes. 9 a.m. conference room. B. Let's keep this professional. No signature, but I knew exactly who wrote it. I stood there holding that note, staring at my own handwritingless ultimatum, and I realized something that made my skin feel cold. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. They didn't wake up today and suddenly restructure. This had been planned. They cleared my office the night before. They updated the contract file. They scheduled HR and legal. They put Tyler's name on my door like a flag. And they did all of it before I even walked into the building. My phone buzzed again. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Tyler. Hey man, don't make this weird. Just come to the meeting." I stared at that message for a long second, because he didn't say sorry. He didn't say I didn't know. He didn't say we should talk. He said don't make this weird. Like my career was a chair he'd pulled out from under me, and the real inconvenience was the noise I might make when I hit the floor. I looked back at the monitor. The contract was open, my work was there, my words, my negotiation points, my relationship with the client, all sitting in a room with someone else's name on the door. And in less than an hour, HR, legal, and my VP were going to sit across from me and tell me this was best for the business. I carried the box out into the hallway, and as I walked toward conference room B, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for years. In this building, loyalty wasn't rewarded. It was harvested, and I was about to find out what they planned to do with everything I'd built. Conference room B was already set up like a courtroom. Water bottles lined up in a neat row, a notepad at each seat. The blinds half closed so the morning light couldn't feel too harsh. That corporate trick where they soften the room so hard decisions feel polite. My VP, Richard Hart, sat at the head of the table like a man waiting for applause. HR was there. Cynthia, calm and expressionless, laptop open, fingers resting on the keyboard, like she was about to type my name into a template. Legal was there too. Devin, in-house counsel, his posture rigid, his eyes doing that careful scanning lawyers do when they're already preparing for disputes. And Tyler was there, leaning back in his chair, ankle resting on his knee, smiling like we were about to do a team-building exercise. No one stood up when I walked in. That told me everything. "Ethan," Richard said, warm voice, practiced. "Have a seat." I didn't sit right away. I put the box down on the table instead. It made a dull, final sound. My photo frame slid inside the cardboard. Cynthia's eyes flicked to it, then away, Tyler gave a small laugh. Dude, come on. I looked at Richard. Why is my office labeled Tyler Hart? Richard didn't blink. He didn't pretend to be surprised. He just steepled his fingers and sighed like I was asking why the sky was blue. We've made some adjustments, he said. Strategic adjustments. Devin shifted slightly. Cynthia started typing. Tyler leaned forward and lowered his voice like he was doing me a favor. It's not a big deal. You can take one of the open offices by the kitchen. It's quieter anyway. I stared at him for a second, trying to understand how someone could speak that casually about taking what wasn't theirs. Then I focused on the only person in the room with actual power. Richard. What adjustments? I asked. Richard smiled. Tyler's going to be taking a more visible role in strategic accounts. I waited. He didn't fill the silence, so I did. You mean my role? Cynthia cleared her throat. Ethan, this isn't a demotion. Your title remains intact for now. Your compensation remains unchanged. For now? I repeated. Devin's eyes stayed down. Lawyers don't like absolutes. Richard spread his hands. We're evolving. We're scaling. And Tyler has the right profile. Clients respond to him. That line almost made me laugh out loud. Keller and Vaughn didn't respond to profiles. They responded to competence. They responded to consistency. They responded to someone who answered the phone at midnight when their CFO was panicking about integration risk. Tyler didn't know what integration risk even meant. I glanced at Cynthia. Can you explain why legal's here? Devin answered before she could. Because of contract exposure. Richard shot him a quick look. Too quick. I caught it. Something about that told me this wasn't as smooth as Richard wanted it to be. I sat down slowly. Not because I accepted it, because I wanted to hear every word. Richard nodded. Like me sitting was agreement. Here's the bigger picture, he said. The Keller and Vaughn deal's getting a lot of attention upstairs. The board is watching. So is the CEO. We need someone who can represent the company the right way. I kept my voice steady. I've represented the company for 8 years. I built that relationship. Richard's smile stayed, but it cooled. And you did well, but you're operational. Tyler is more strategic. Tyler smirked at that like he'd earned it. I felt the irritation flare behind my ribs, but I kept my face neutral. That was the first rule in rooms like this. If you show emotion, they label it instability. I pointed to my box. So you had facilities clear my office last night. Richard nodded. We didn't want disruption this morning. Disruption, I repeated. You didn't want me to have time to think. Cynthia spoke carefully. Ethan, we're asking you to cooperate. The transition needs to be seamless. Tyler tapped the table with one finger. Yeah, you'll be fine. Just give me whatever notes you have. We'll keep you looped in. Looped in? Like I was an intern. I took a slow breath. What exactly does taking a visible role mean? Richard leaned back. Tyler will be listed as the primary account executive going forward. That sentence landed like a punch, even though I'd already seen it on the screen. I didn't react. I just looked at Devin. Devin's jaw tightened. He didn't like it either. Richard saw my gaze and added quickly, You'll still support. We want your expertise. But Tyler will lead the calls. It's good development for him. So I do the work and he gets the credit. Richard's smile thinned. Don't be cynical. Tyler laughed again, but softer this time. Man, why are you taking it personally? Because it was personal. It was my life. I turned to Cynthia. Are you documenting this as a performance issue? Cynthia's eyes met mine for the first time. No. Then why is this happening? She hesitated. A fraction of a second. That was my answer. Because if it wasn't performance, it was politics. And politics meant I was disposable. Richard leaned forward, voice lowering. Let me be very clear. We're not asking. This is the new structure. Devin cleared his throat. Richard, we should be precise about language. Richard didn't look at him. We're done here. Tyler stood up too, like he was late for something important. Cool. I'll send you a list of what I need. Access, docs, client contacts. I stared at him. Access, I said. To what? Tyler shrugged. Everything. I'm running the deal now. That's when the irritation turned into something sharper. Not rage, clarity. Because Tyler wasn't learning, he was taking, and Richard wasn't scaling. He was handing his son my career like a gift. Richard stood. Meeting over. Cynthia closed her laptop. Devin gathered his papers like he wanted to disappear. As they filed out, Richard paused at the door and said something that sounded like advice but felt like a threat. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Ethan. You've done well here. Don't ruin that. Then he left. Tyler lingered. He stepped closer, lowered his voice, and smiled like we were sharing a secret. Between us, he said, this is just how it works. He walked out, leaving me alone in that softened, polite room. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the water bottles, the neat notepads, the perfect corporate setup designed to make betrayal feel professional. And that's when my phone buzzed again. Not a text, an email from Keller & Vaughn's procurement lead. Subject line, quick question before tomorrow's final call. I opened it, and the first sentence made my stomach drop, because it was addressed to Tyler, not me. I read that email 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, because my brain kept trying to rewrite it into something less insulting. Hi, Tyler. Quick question before tomorrow's final call. It wasn't a mass blast. It wasn't a typo. It was clean, deliberate, like Keller & Vaughn had already been told Tyler was the guy. I scrolled down. Procurement was asking about a pricing assumption I had personally negotiated 2 weeks earlier, one that only existed because I'd offered it as a compromise to their CFO at 11:47 p.m. on a Sunday. Tyler couldn't answer that. He didn't even know the compromise existed, and what hit me hardest wasn't the disrespect, it was the risk. Because if Tyler fumbled that question, the deal didn't just slow down, it could collapse. And if it collapsed, Richard wouldn't blame Tyler. He'd blame the person who failed to support the transition. He'd blame me. I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I did what I've always done when something feels wrong. I opened the facts. First, CRM. I logged into Salesforce and pulled up the Keller & Vaughn account. My stomach tightened. My name wasn't listed as primary anymore. Tyler's was. My permissions had been reduced too, still able to view, but not edit key fields. Even the activity log looked different, like someone had scrubbed the story to make it look like Tyler had always been in control. Second, the deal folder. We kept everything in SharePoint with a strict permission model. Client security audits demanded it. I opened the folder. Half the subfolders were still there. But my personal working folder, where I kept my negotiation map, the call notes, the timeline, the landmines, had been renamed. Tyler, working notes. That wasn't just stealing my work, that was rewriting ownership. Third, the calendar. The final call was on the books for tomorrow morning. K&V procurement, their legal, their CIO, our CFO, and Richard, and Tyler, as lead. I sat there staring at the screen, and for the first time all day, I felt something crack. Not anger, not fear. A kind of quiet, heavy realization. They weren't testing me. They weren't restructuring. They had already decided the narrative. Tyler was the hero, and I was the support staff who should be grateful to still have a badge. That night, I stopped being the hero. I stopped thinking, how do I save them from this mistake? And started thinking, how do I keep myself from being the casualty of their mistake? I did not take anything. No client files, no confidential documents, no pricing sheets. I didn't forward myself decks. I didn't screenshot sensitive data. I did what any competent professional does when their career gets shoved toward a cliff. I preserved my own work product and my own timeline, emails, my personal notes on decisions, my record of who said what and when, things I had a right to keep for my own protection. Then I opened the only document that mattered more than any email, the contract, not the marketing terms, not the slide deck, the actual master services agreement. Because I remembered something Keller and Vaughn's counsel had said months ago, casually like a footnote. We need continuity. We don't do last-minute personnel swaps. At the time, I'd nodded and moved on. Now, I searched for the term that decides whether a company can play musical chairs. With a deal this size, key personnel. There it was, a clause that wasn't dramatic on paper, but it was lethal in practice. It didn't say Keller and Vaughn would cancel if the account lead changed. It said something smarter. The vendor must designate key personnel for implementation and account governance. Replacement requires prior written approval. If key personnel are removed without approval, Keller and Vaughn can delay milestones, suspend progress, and reopen commercial terms. In plain English, if they change the face of the deal at the finish line, Keller and Vaughn had every right to slam on the brakes and renegotiate. And then I found the line that made my hands go cold. A separate addendum, tucked behind the security requirements, stated that the account governance lead would attend quarterly steering meetings for the first year after signature. The name on the draft? Mine, not Tyler's. Which meant Richard wasn't just promoting his son. He was creating a mismatch between what the client had already reviewed and what the company was trying to present. A mismatch that would trigger questions. Questions that would trigger legal. Legal that would trigger the board. And suddenly I understood why Devin had looked uncomfortable in that meeting. They weren't confident. They were trying to outrun paperwork. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. 8 years of loyalty, and the thing that might protect me wasn't a mentor or a manager. It was contract language. I pulled up my employment agreement next. Non-solicit. Confidentiality. Standard. Nothing I hadn't seen before. Then I opened the commission plan. My name was on the Keller and Vaughn opportunity, but the crediting policy had a sentence I'd never paid attention to. Management may reassign accounts at its discretion. So even if the deal signed tomorrow, Richard could legally route the commission to Tyler, claim it was his account, and tell me to be grateful for the salary. That's when the break became something cleaner. Resolve. I wasn't going to fight them emotionally. I was going to outlast them professionally. I drafted one email, not to Keller and Vaughn, to myself, a timeline of the last 60 days, key calls, key decisions, key approvals, and the exact moment I was removed. Then I drafted another email, this one to Devin. No accusations, no drama, just one sentence. I need to understand my exposure if leadership is changing key personnel on the Keller and Vaughn deal the day before final call. I didn't send it yet, because I didn't want a conversation. I wanted a record. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark of my kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum, feeling that strange calm you only feel when the worst thing already happened. And now all you can do is choose what happens next. Tomorrow, they were going to walk into that call and pretend Tyler had earned the right to speak for work he didn't do. And if I stayed, I'd be the silent accomplice. If I left, I'd be the scapegoat. So I chose the only option that still gave me control. I wrote a resignation letter. Short, polite, no threats, just a date. Just a line that mattered more than anything else. I'm resigning, effective, immediately. Then I saved it as a PDF. And as I hovered over print, one thought landed, clear as a bell. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. I didn't sleep. Not because I was spiraling, because I was checking my own work. At 6:12 a.m., I sent 2 emails. One to Richard Hart and Cynthia in HR, with Devin copied. Subject, resignation short. Clean. No speeches. I'm resigning effective immediately. Please confirm where to return company property and how you'd like client continuity handled. That was it. The second email was even shorter. Subject, K&V key personnel. Before today's final call, please confirm that Keller and Vaughn has approved changes to designated key personnel and account governance lead. No accusations, no threats. Just a question that forced them to either lie in writing or face the claws. Then I drove in, not to fight, to hand back my badge, my laptop, and make sure nobody could later claim I abandoned the job or refused to cooperate. The lobby was busier than yesterday, but the energy was wrong, tight, watchful. People looked up when I walked past, then looked away. On the elevator, my phone buzzed. Cynthia, HR. Please come to conference room D at 7:30. They moved the room. Of course they did. Conference room D was smaller, no windows, a folder already on the table. Richard wasn't there. Cynthia was, Devin was, and Tyler was, somehow already annoyed, like my resignation had inconvenienced his schedule. Cynthia slid the folder toward me. We received your email. Devin didn't speak. He looked tired, like he'd been awake since my second email hit his inbox. Tyler leaned forward. So you're really doing this? I didn't answer him. I looked at Cynthia. Here to return property and get the separation process documented. Cynthia nodded. We can do that. We'll need your laptop and badge. I placed them on the table. Calm. Deliberate. Tyler's eyes went to the laptop like it was a prize. Great. Then just send me your notes. The call is in... Devin cut in sharp. Tyler, stop. Tyler blinked. What? Devin finally looked at me. Ethan, did you contact Keller and Vaughn? No, I said. I haven't spoken to them. Good, Devin said, and it didn't sound like praise. It sounded like relief. Cynthia opened the folder. We'll provide you with your final pay details, and my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't internal. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I let it ring out. A voicemail hit immediately. Then another call. Same number. Tyler smirked. Probably recruiters. They smell panic. Devin's expression didn't move. Ethan, the email you sent about key personnel, where did you get that language? I kept my voice even. From the contract we negotiated. The version your team reviewed last week. Devin's jaw flexed once. Cynthia glanced at him. Devin? Devin didn't look at her. Keller and Vaughn's procurement lead just emailed me directly. That got Tyler to sit up. Devin continued, measured. They want to know why the primary account executive changed less than 24 hours before final call, and why the name on the governance addendum doesn't match the draft they have. Tyler's face lost color fast. Okay, that's... Tyler started. Devin held up a hand. No, don't. Cynthia's voice tightened. Richard approved the transition. Devin finally looked at her. Approval internally is not the same as client consent. They have a key personnel clause. They can pause. They can reopen commercial terms, and they can ask for a new risk review. Tyler laughed once too high. They won't blow up a $280 deal over a name. Devin's eyes stayed cold. They already are. Silence hit the room. Heavy, immediate, not awkward silence. The kind that means the floor just shifted. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. I stepped away from the table and answered. Ethan Parker. A woman's voice, controlled, professional. Ethan, this is Nadia Torres. Keller and Vaughn Procurement. I'm calling because I'm confused. I didn't gloat. I didn't apologize. I understand. We received a note this morning listing Tyler Hart as the primary, she said. But yesterday my team had you, and our CIO is asking why the governance lead changed. Are you still on the account? I glanced back through the glass. Devin was watching me now. Cynthia had gone still. Tyler looked like he wanted to grab the phone out of my hand. I kept it clean. I'm no longer with Hartwell Systems. A pause. Then, since when? Effective today. Another pause. Longer. Then Nadia's voice dropped a fraction. No one told us that. I can't speak for their internal decisions, I said, but I can confirm my employment ended. She exhaled once. All right. Thank you for being direct. Before she hung up, she added one line, quiet, pointed. For what it's worth, Ethan, this is a problem. The call ended. I walked back to the table and sat. Tyler stared at me like I detonated something. Cynthia's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were pale. Devin opened his laptop and typed fast, then stopped and looked at me. "Did you say anything else?" he asked. "No," I said, "just that I'm no longer employed there." Devin nodded once, almost to himself. That was my small moment of satisfaction, not revenge. Confirmation. I hadn't threatened. I hadn't leaked. I hadn't played games. I'd simply removed myself from their story. And without me, the story didn't hold. Cynthia stood abruptly. "I need to call Richard." Tyler stood too. "This is insane. He can't just—" Devin's voice cut through again. "Tyler, sit down." Tyler didn't. Devin looked at me. "Ethan, your resignation is accepted. You'll receive exit details by end of day." I slid a simple printed checklist across the table. Return receipt of laptop and badge, date, signatures. Cynthia signed. Devin signed. Tyler didn't touch it. Cynthia rushed out, phone already to her ear. Through the glass, I could hear her half-whispered panic. "Richard, you need to come down here. Now." Devin's laptop chimed. Another email. He read it, and his shoulders tightened. Then he spoke, quietly, like he didn't want Tyler to hear. "The client is requesting a written explanation for the personnel change," he said, "and they're postponing the final call." Tyler's voice cracked. "Postponing?" Devin didn't look at him. "Yes." Tyler turned to me, angry now. "So what? You're just going to walk out and burn the company?" I met his eyes. "I walked out," I said. "You did the rest." I stood, picked up my box, the same box from yesterday, and headed for the door. Behind me, Devin said one last thing. Not to threaten me, to confirm reality. "Ethan," he said, "you should expect a call from the board." And as I stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed again. Different number this time. A calendar invite from Keller and Vaughn. Subject line, Ethan Parker, 1 p.m. Private discussion. And at 12:58 p.m., I sat in my car in a parking lot across town with my laptop balanced on my knees, a plain black coffee cooling in the cup holder, and my resignation letter still feeling unreal. Not because I regretted it, because my brain kept trying to process how fast a stable career can turn into a locked badge. The invite from Keller and Vaughn had come through official channels. Calendar domain, procurement organizer, video link, dial-in, all of it. No drama, just corporate efficiency. Ethan Parker, private discussion. I clicked join at exactly one. Nadia Torres appeared first. Procurement. Calm face, tight mouth. Then their legal counsel, Martin Cho. Gray hair, no small talk. Then their CIO, Priya Singh. Direct eyes, the kind that made people stop performing. No Tyler, no Richard, no Hartwell systems, just them. And me. Nadia started. "Ethan, thank you for joining on short notice." "Of course," I said. "I want to be respectful of your time." Priya didn't waste a second. "We were told you were the governance lead. We based internal risk decisions on your continuity. Today we learned you're no longer with Hartwell Systems. Why?" I didn't turn it into a rant. I didn't tell them the whole soap opera. I gave them the truth in the only format businesses respect, clean and factual. I was removed from the account without warning. My office and account ownership were reassigned. I resigned today. Martin Cho's eyes narrowed slightly. "Were you asked to transfer documents or access in a way that concerned you?" "No," I said carefully, "but I did not have confidence the transition would meet the obligations stated in your key personnel clause." Nadia exhaled like she'd been holding it. "We have that clause for a reason." Priya leaned forward. "Do you believe Hartwell can deliver without you?" That question felt personal and professional at the same time. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't say they're idiots. I said what was defensible. I believe delivery requires continuity of the people who built the architecture, negotiated scope, and understand the risk trade-offs. Those people were not in the room this morning. Priya nodded once. "Understood." There was a quiet pause, and then Nadia's tone shifted. Still professional, but softer. "Ethan, I'm going to ask you something directly," she said. "If we pause this deal, do you have somewhere else you can take us?" My heart didn't race. It didn't need to. Because I'd already thought about that possibility in the only responsible way. What I'm allowed to do, what I'm not allowed to do, and what's ethical. I kept my posture steady. I can't solicit you while you're under contract discussion with my former employer, and I won't ask you to break any process. But if you decide independently to reopen vendor evaluation, you can reach me. I'm not under a non-compete. I am under confidentiality obligations. Martin's mouth twitched, approval but muted. Priya watched me for a long second. You didn't call us. We called you. That's correct. Nadia nodded. Good. Then Martin said the sentence that made everything click into place. Your former company has an obligation to notify us of key personnel changes and obtain written consent. They did not do that. Priya's voice was flat. So we are suspending the final call, and we are reopening risk review. Nadia added, and commercial terms are back on the table. If they want this deal, they can earn it again. I didn't smile, not because it didn't feel satisfying, because it wasn't my job to celebrate someone else's failure in front of a client. But inside, something released. For the first time in 2 days, I felt my shoulders drop. They weren't going to be able to blame me quietly. They weren't going to be able to pretend this was seamless. They'd have to answer. Priya looked at me again. Ethan, what do you want? That question caught me off guard, not because I didn't have an answer, but because nobody at Hartwell had asked me that in years. I chose my words carefully. I want to work where performance isn't optional and nepotism isn't a strategy. Nadia gave a faint, almost involuntary smile. Then she said, We're going to be blunt. We liked you. We trusted you. Your former VP made a decision that undermined both. Martin added, If you form or join a firm that can deliver what you designed, we'd review it. Priya nodded. And if you consult, we'd consider you for governance oversight, independent of the vendor. There it was, the thing Richard never understood. The real asset wasn't the contract. It was the trust. And trust doesn't transfer because you stick a new nameplate on a door. Nadia concluded the call. We'll send a formal notice to Hartwell. Ethan, thank you. We'll be in touch with next steps depending on how the review proceeds. The screen went black. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at my own reflection in the dark laptop screen. No applause, no dramatic music, just quiet. My phone lit up almost immediately. 3 missed calls, then 4, then 9, from Richard Hart, then 1 from an unknown extension I recognized from the executive suite, then another. A voicemail notification came in. I didn't listen. Not yet. Because for the first time in a long time, I had something I hadn't had at Hartwell Systems, space. I drove home, walked into my apartment, set my box on the floor and put my photo frame back on the shelf, right side up. Then I finally opened the first voicemail. Richard's voice, strained, trying to sound controlled and failing. Ethan, call me. We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. We can fix this. I stopped it halfway. Misunderstanding. No. It was understood perfectly. They gave my office to his son, so I walked out. And the $280 deal didn't follow me because I was petty. It followed me because they made the one mistake no client forgives. They treated trust like office furniture. That evening, Nadia emailed again, short, formal. We have issued notice of suspension to Hartwell Systems. Vendor evaluation will be revisited. And below that, 1 private line. If you decide to consult, send me a capability statement. We prefer working with adults. I closed the laptop. I looked around my small living room, quiet, ordinary, real. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not because I won, but because I didn't bend. I didn't beg. I didn't stay loyal to people who saw loyalty as a resource to consume. I walked away with my dignity intact. And somewhere in a glass boardroom, a man who thought he could hand my life to his son was learning a simple rule. You can steal a title. You can steal an office. But you can't steal the person the world trusts to deliver.